Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining back in the Dashboard Dojo. Today, we'll talk about dashboard concepts. I have Kyle Shagnon with me today as serving as host. Thank you for doing this again, Kyle.
Of course.
This is great. Today, we thought to try a slightly different approach. If you want to come off mute and ask a question, love to make this as interactive as possible. I do have some prepared content, but I'd love to get to a point where we're information sharing a little bit more. So today's topic is dashboard concepts, which is this whole big broad category. And of course, it just, as I was prepping for today, I'm like, oh, I should include this and I should include that. And I think, what I'd love to get to is a point where, and if you have things that have worked really well for you, maybe you could share them a little bit later. We'll have a dashboard, a discussion about dashboard concepts. But it's like often when you combine different features where things start getting really interesting, and I'd love to hear that from each of you. So for the agenda today, I'll quickly introduce myself. We'll talk through some different techniques. I'd love to have a what's worked well type of discussion. We'll talk about some upcoming Dōjō topics. And I don't know if I've shared with the group, but I'm actually going to disappear for a few months. I'm going to unplug as much as I can. And we have a next date scheduled for September. So I hope you'll join us for that, for a hands-on session on the 11 types of dashboard components. I've got training next week, a 2-day hands-on report and dashboard workshop. So I can't wait for that. And we can do Q&A throughout, so it's not so formal to be at the end. So I actually lived out one of my dreams about a week ago. This is a digger up at my buddy's property up in northern Vermont, and he rented it for the weekend to move some massive stones. So he had a forklift attachment and this little bucket loader thing. And we actually took a chainsaw and went into the forest, and we cut a path for his son to drive his ATV around. And part of it was me driving this thing, which is really, it's hilarious. So someday I will own land in Vermont, and I will probably own a skid steer as part of that. They're really a hoot to drive. You get 4 different controls to lift the bucket, drop the bucket, dump the bucket, and then actually turn left and right. But so my name is David Carnes. I'm the chairman and chief evangelist of OpFocus. So OpFocus is a gold Salesforce partner in the US and Canada. We work with SaaS companies to help them with their revenue operations. So for today, we'll talk about profile permissions, because I always want to talk about permissions, even just for a second. Talking about organizing dashboards, decluttering the dashboard tab. One concept that I really like, my dashboards and my team dashboards, and these are really nice for embedding into places such as the homepage. Ideas for encouraging users to interact with dashboards. It's not all that obvious for users that there are quite a few ways that they can actually interact with the dashboard beyond just looking at the dashboard. We'll talk about cloning, just a nice way to continuously improve. We'll talk about filtering, subscriptions, downloading, fine-tuning, and then probably the best part of today's session, I hope, will be the ideas and what's worked well. So again, if you're just joining us, today will be a little different. You can come off mute anytime. Let's try to have a little bit more of a discussion. I do want to get to a what's worked well. So if you think of things that have worked well for you over time, I'd love to hear about them a little later in the session today. All right, so if you've seen me present before, you've heard me talk about profile permissions. So there are 31 report and dashboard related permissions. And there are quite a few that are dashboard specific. It's probably about half, which maybe that makes sense. But even things that you might not expect, like the ability to change dashboard colors. So, there's a whole group of us that are admins all the time, and when we're in a system, and then there are some regular users, and out of the box, they're given 4 report and dashboard permissions. And then, we often have groups that are in the middle, like super users that we want to give permissions to. And you really have to be thoughtful with dashboards to give them the right permissions to get the job done, such as the ability to create and customize dashboards, change dashboard colors, create folders, manage folders, but even the ability to manage dashboards in a public folder, or one for like a manager could be view my team's dashboards. And this is related to the dynamic dashboard capability to be able to view the folks below them in the role hierarchy. So that view my team's dashboards, and certainly subscribe to dashboards. Out of the box, everybody should be able to subscribe to 5. However, that's not available unless we give them the permission So we actually have to go either create a permission set or modify their profiles to give them these permissions. So I'm not at all saying that everybody deserves every one of these. In this blog article, I've sort of separated out groups. So I'll stop there, but hopefully that's helpful. You know, we can organize dashboards in a number of ways. And I think an important thought is that your CEO does not need to see every dashboard in the system. I think that's sort of a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, the higher up they are, the more they should see. And I'd actually argue the other way around, that your CEO, so Astrid, who's our CEO, when she logs into the system, she probably sees too much. She should really just see the one or two folders and the sets of dashboards within those that will help her do her job. So we organize dashboards into folders. As you know, there are 3 levels of permissions for the folders. So we can control sharing at the view, edit, or manage. So if somebody is not given view permission on a folder, they can't see anything in the folder. Another sort of knee-jerk reaction is to think, oh, if I'm sharing it with the CEO, then she needs to be able to edit or manage the dashboards. I would say in most cases, if you're going to create a dashboard, you probably want to protect your dashboards and put them in a folder with view permissions. The reality is, if somebody can create dashboards, they can always create a clone of your dashboard and save it somewhere else and make their own changes to it. I'd say I'd be pretty conservative with handing out editor manage permissions, and also be conservative with just letting people see things at all. Most users see hundreds too many dashboards that are not relevant to them. So there's a lot of work related to that. On the dashboard tab, Salesforce added a search, and the search is a little weird. It works differently than the global search. It searches by the first letters of each word in the dashboard name, and it highlights the results on the tab, but it's a little weird getting used to that, and it's context specific. So if I go into an org here and I go to the dashboard tab, the default for the search, you see it says search recent dashboards. It's searching based on the context of the category selected over here. So if I click on all dashboards, the search context changes to all dashboards, but just keep in mind that the default is recent, and the search only searches the first letters of a word. So if I search for 2.0, it doesn't find anything, but if I search for v2.0, it'll find that one dashboard here and highlight. It doesn't search within the words. And again, conceptually, it's just one of those things that it's a little clumsy, but it is the way it is. Whereas this search up here will actually search through the names of the dashboards. It does not search the descriptions, oddly, but it searches the names. So the global search works differently for whatever reason than the dashboard tab search or the report tab search. When decluttering the dashboard tab, which is a great activity, there are a couple of best practices for this. One would be to create a private folder, just call it old dashboard archive. A dashboard doesn't actually consume any storage, so there's no reason to just knee-jerk delete them, but you might hide them. And before just willy-nilly hiding things, you might actually create a custom report type on dashboards. And I was tinkering with this and realizing we can use the field lookups. We can add some extra intel on these dashboards. So what do I mean by this? So if we go to the reports tab, I think I might have saved it. Okay, I created a report called Dashboard Catalog. This is based on a custom report type that I created on dashboards, which then allows me to create a report on dashboards. And I did this using a special feature within report types that allows me to pull in running user details, such as whether the running user is active or not. I pulled in created by details and also last modified by details, just in case, are they active or not? What's their role? What's their profile for these users? And it could be years ago that some of these dashboards were created. So the way that I did that, again, within the report type, I created a report type, a custom report type on dashboards. And then I went a little further than that. So normally you just get these 20 columns here. But if I collapse that, what I did was add in additional fields using the lookup within the report type for running user specific information. Because if the running user is no longer active, then your dashboard is broken. So you guys have probably all seen that. But we can also use the the related field lookup to pull in you can pull in folder details, created by user details, and last modified by user details. So I've essentially given myself 15 plus additional fields that I can take advantage of, and there are even more that we could use if we needed to. And behind the scenes, just to take a peek at this, under setup, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, report types. So I have this one here, and I just created a report type on dashboards. But to add the additional information, I went down into this fields available and I edited the layout. And we could use the add fields related via lookup. So we did a couple sessions back in, maybe it was March, maybe April, on report types. And we talked about adding fields related via lookup. And what I did was just added a couple more sections beyond the initial 20 fields. And you can tell these fields that are added via lookup because they have the magnifying glass next to them. But I was able to pull in a little bit more intel to then go create a report to go catalog all my dashboards. Then I might export that to Excel and start making some decisions about who owns this. Do we need it? Should we keep it? Is it a classic dashboard? Should we upgrade it to a lightning dashboard, etc.? My dashboards and my team dashboards are very, very powerful concepts. I remember when this was first possible, it was such an eye-opening thing to go from, if you had 100 sales reps and you had 10 reports on a dashboard as 10 components, you might have to create a dashboard with 10 reports for every single salesperson. But in this case, we could have one dashboard with one set of reports and use the running user to specify whose data should be used. So the underlying reports have my filters, and we can see here the underlying reports have show me my opportunities. So if we save that and then create a dashboard and have the dashboard run as the dashboard user, and maybe even go one step further and let the dashboard viewers choose who they view the dashboard as. And if you allow that, then you want to make sure you check the profile permission that says view my team's dashboards, and that'll allow them to, so if Tina is a sales director, she has 15 reps reporting to her, then she could basically set the running user for everybody beneath her. So my dashboards are super powerful, and you can also embed them into a homepage. I really like that. The change link works. So if I'm the head of sales, I could just run it for each one of my reps and look at their data. All the buttons work essentially when you embed a dashboard. So this is a powerful technique, again, combining the filters on the underlying source reports being my driven with dynamic dashboards. Well, we can do the same thing with my team dashboards. So again, underlying reports would be based on the my team filters. And if we went into a system here, I think this is one. So I've got my team sales, and if I go run one of these reports, and I go look at the filters on the reports, I've got show me my team's opportunities. So again, the running user then would be the director of the team or the manager of the team, and we'd see his or her, all the opportunities owned by the people on the team. Has anybody made any particular use of my dashboards or my team dashboards that they want to share? Any interesting experiences with them?
I use them all the time. We at the organization that I'm with, and we use my my dashboards all the time. But one thing that problem that I have, and I don't know if I'm doing something incorrectly, but if you click into something, then you can't. The report doesn't show.
Right, it doesn't persist. So the my then applies
doesn't.
to you as opposed to whoever the running user was.
Right. Okay.
So years ago in Classic, it would actually have a little red line that says, you clicked on a dashboard component, the data you're seeing may be different than what you saw because now it's using your permissions as opposed to the dashboard running user permissions.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we don't have a way around that specifically, though one of the ideas I thought to talk about later is we can override where, when you click on this link here, the view report, we can override where that goes. And one of the ideas that somebody I was speaking with last week really loves is actually having that go to another dashboard. So if we go look at this dashboard that I was just on, and if we were to come in here, so this doesn't solve your problem specifically, but you could maybe control it a little differently. So if I come in here into the pencil, so for this one component, which is a gas gauge with a source report called My Team Sales, we can actually override where that link goes. And you could have it go to an external system. You could have it go to some other place in Salesforce. We could also, if we wish, have it go to Disney.com. And it's ridiculous, but we can. And if I update that and save it, and I leave myself these little Easter eggs, different. This is in a Dreamforce org, so I could be up on stage and find this, like step in it later. But if I go ahead and click on this, oh, I didn't reload the browser. Sorry about that. This would basically take us to Disney instead of going to the underlying report. Now that doesn't solve what you're specifically asking for, but there might be another way to have it go somewhere else so it's not confusing. But
right,
yes.
yeah, that opens up some possibilities. I've never used that feature. Cool.
Yeah, and that would be available for all of them. I must have to clear the cache or something to get that. That link should work.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, Michelle. I think it's really important that we take a moment and show our users how to interact with dashboards. So, there's so many things that we can do aside from looking at the Born on Budweiser date and clicking the refresh button, right? So if somebody is able to use dynamic dashboards and they have the change link here, they can take advantage of that. Certainly taking advantage of filters, being able to click on the drill downs. And I tweeted something out about this morning. I guess I hadn't realized that not only the segments on vertical bars, vertical stacked, horizontal stack, lines, funnels, donuts, we can click on the actual segments, but it's not just that. We can actually click on the legend items, and we can filter the same report by stage by clicking on the legend items. We could click by all these industry names here on that bottom axis of the chart. So I find that kind of interesting. There's more interactivity than you'd think, and that allows you to filter down through. I'm just trying to think how that could apply. We could take advantage of that somehow for Michelle's problem, but I'll have to come back to that. So we can also now, with the summer 21 release, we can download an image of the entire dashboard. Within an individual component, we have the component viewer. So if we click on the expand icon up in the top right of each component, we can essentially flip through each one using these left and right arrows. We have the ability to make comments to Chatter. We can also download the individual component as a PNG file. So that's kind of helpful. I use Snagit all day long. So Snagit, I'm probably more likely to use Snagit than the download, but I'm happy that we have the download capability. One of the things that I think isn't as obvious is it's super helpful to clone a dashboard and just start tinkering with it. So let's say like Bruce, who's on the call, Bruce is always trying to improve stuff. He works really hard, tirelessly. And rather than go in and muck around with one of the dashboards, you can clone it into your own private folder if you wish. Or if Michelle, when she's trying to troubleshoot this, see if we can come up with ideas for how we can improve that experience for when they view the report, she might create a clone just using save as and then modify the clone. So, there's always, I think it's just a great challenge. You have an intern who's learning this, you could challenge them, hey, try to make this dashboard better, but do it with a clone. And that's nice. You can protect the underlying dashboard until you're ready to replace it. There's some nice benefits to using that. We've talked about filtering many times in the Dōjō, such a valuable thing. We can have up to 3 filters per dashboard. These are created by an admin or somebody with the ability to modify dashboards, create or edit dashboards. If there was mixed data, if there were leads and opportunities, the filters wouldn't necessarily apply to all components. So this particular dashboard example has basically all opportunity data, so all the filters would apply to everything. And the filters filter filters. So the same filter, so if you have 2 filters applied, it's the intersection of those 2. So it's a really nice, powerful feature to take advantage of. I'm curious if anybody on the call has taken advantage of the URL parameters. We can pass URL parameters to dashboards, and that's as of either the winter or the spring release. Has anybody tried that out? I tried it out when it came out, and I was sort of, not completely convinced that I could come up with a great use case. But I'd love to hear if anybody else has taken advantage of the URL parameters. So Howard, I would have thought you would have pounced on that when it came out.
So you could use the URL parameters, let's say on an account, to launch a dashboard of opportunities, right? For that specific account, like through a button or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was the intention. I think when I played with it, it was clumsier than I expected, and it's not as dynamic as you think. So, we have 650 target accounts in this system, but the filter value, I think, already has to exist. There was something clumsy like that. It was less dynamic than I thought it would be, because what you're describing, John, say is that that button would appear on all accounts, which makes a ton of sense. But I think the filter value might have to be pre-existing. Oh, so John Say asked the question about Chrome versus Firefox. Do you know why I have all 3 open here? Is because I'm in different orgs, and I go out of my mind if I use multiple orgs in the same browser. So I just have orgs that I've used for different types of presentations. So I have different things built in different places. But I guess I use all of them pretty. If I admitted, I probably use Chrome the most. But does anyone else have any opinion on dashboard performance or reporting performance by browser type? It's such a good question. It's mainly for me to just keep things separate. All right. So we'll have to circle back. I'll play with the URL parameters more. I remember when it came out, I was sort of like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to use this, because I liked John Say's idea, and that's the one that I seized on, and I feel like it was clumsier than I wanted it to be. So you can have 50 filter values per filter, and if we can have 3 filters per dashboard, that means we can have 150 filter values. We can actually have more than that with commas in the individual values, but not really. So I feel like there was some big limitation like that. I really wanted to be able to pass an account ID, and it just was clumsier than I wanted. So subscriptions, Salesforce has done a nice job with these. There are essentially 2 ways to use it. You can use it as a refresh tool for a dashboard. You don't have to receive the email, or you can receive the email. We, at OpFocus, we had an outsourced COO. He was not a Salesforce user in our system. He might have worked 1 day a week or half a day a week, but once a month, he wanted a very specific set of data. And I just had a subscription come to myself, and then I forwarded that email on. So he wasn't able to click on anything and log into Salesforce, but it gave him that snapshot of data that he needed. So this is another one of those things that if you don't give the ability to subscribe to dashboards to your users, they can't use it. So this is a very intentional thing. You have to give them the ability to subscribe to dashboards, and then they can subscribe to up to 5 in Lightning. I mentioned the downloading dashboard images. This is new for the summer 21 release. Very simple, nothing to activate. It's just there. Click on the down arrow, the action pull down, and you've got the download button. And it just downloads as a PNG. I mentioned the same thing for individual components. When you click on the expand and you get into the component viewer, you've got that download icon. A couple of thoughts for fine tuning dashboards. We do have the ability to add additional measures. This is one of those areas where I think a lot of us slap sort of horizontal bar or vertical bars without any real interesting complexity to them. We can actually have up to 4 measures on horizontal bars, vertical bars, and line charts. And you can see here, I've got an example where I've put 2 of them. So I have the sum of the amount and the average amounts, and I'm showing the average amount as a line. But we can actually have up to 4 measures. And the way that you do that, you first have to create a source report that has enough items of the same data type. So at OpFocus, we have a project object. The project object has a whole bunch of currency fields. And if I summed up a bunch of those columns, I could then use them on a dashboard component and have up to 4 appear, whether it's side by side or with lines. And we do have the ability to have an additional second axis, and you can see that in this bottom screenshot here. It says plot as a line chart, and we can check the box to plot on the second axis if we wish. Has anybody had any good examples of using additional measures? I imagine some of you have sort of interesting counts or registrations or attendance or.
I do. I use that a lot, and I really love it. Actually, that you can hover over something and get a sort of a synopsis of what's going on in something in the report, which is a really nice feature. It gives you all the information for each entry there. What I have found though is when I do that and you get that little, you hover over and you get a box that has all of that summarization of information, the 4th object or the 4th
measure
piece of the measurement, it drops off sometimes. And then so that can get to be frustrating. So what I've just figured out is that I just have to sort of I think I reload the report in and refresh and it works fine. It's just something that happens. It does happen somewhat consistently though.
Okay. And that's great. So the key here is same data type, and that can be tricky. If you just want to show students and the average tuition that they're paying or something like that, and that's not the same data type. We do have the ability on the source report to either use a row level formula or a summary formula, and you can essentially use that to change the data type. So every now and then I have a record count, which is a number with no decimals, and I have a dollar something or other, and I might change it from currency data type to a number to take advantage of the additional measures. And so it won't show up as a currency, but that still might be useful to you depending on the situation. The other thing to point out with fine tuning, or another idea, is to take advantage of 2-level sorting. So this was introduced probably 2 years ago, something like that. So in Lightning, on the components, we can sort by something such as the record count. You can see here that this guy, David, has the most leads. And then we can choose to sort by another thing, in this case, a grouping, such as lead status. And every now and then I'll see things that are backwards, like the opportunity stages will be backwards of the lead statuses. And we sort of, many of us in many parts of the world sort of read left to right, and we think of processes going from left to right. Or to make the data pop more, we want to have like the highest count. We want to have a leaderboard or a wall of shame. And we can take advantage of this sorting, especially if it's a large data set. For 3 people, 3 lead owners, maybe it's not so much, but if I had 50, that might be quite a bit more meaningful to be able to use that. One other idea for dashboard fine tuning, well, certainly, for all your dashboards, we want to make sure that they are Lightning dashboards. And if you're not sure, when you create a report on dashboard, so you create a custom report type on dashboard, save it. One of the columns on a report you can create on dashboards is it using the grid? If it's not using the grid, it's actually a classic dashboard. Now, classic dashboards appear in Lightning, but they look, they're kind of suspect. So if I come in here, I can tell And I looked at one earlier and I knew right away. I think it was service manager. Which one? It was this one. So you can kind of, you know what? I think I might have even tinkered with this one. So this one has been overridden, but let me find. I'll find one. Executive sponsor, service cloud. I think it was one of these sales cloud ones. So let's look at this one. Nope. So what I'm looking for, and I think I've tinkered with this one as well, I'm looking for just that all the components are the same size. But if you go ahead and edit that, it'll say, hey, this is a classic dashboard. Do you wish to move it to Lightning? Another thing that you can see, if I come back, I'll go into my pre-configured and let's find one that I haven't done much with. How about this one? Okay, if I come in here and edit this, some of them you'll see are 9 columns. And the classic ones that were brought over are 9 columns. Some of the early Lightning ones are 9 columns. All new Lightning dashboards would be 12 columns. But you want those extra columns just to have more precision in where you put things on the dashboard. So where does that impact us? Well, it impacts us. Salesforce has, when you add a component to a dashboard, it just has a default size. And the default size is in no way optimized, right? It's just a default size. And if you take a moment after you add it and hover over the horizontal and hover over the vertical on the right, and so the bottom and the right, you might see a gray bar. And that gray bar is telling you that you have to scroll to see all the data. I'd say that scrolling is not a common activity for people that are using dashboards. It's just sort of an odd thing. So what we might do is go ahead and expand the width. And this is the true width. And you can see this whole bunch of stuff is cut off. Now, another approach entirely would be to make this a top 10 list or a top 7 list. So when we come into our dashboard, we absolutely can in one of these components. Of course, I don't have, here we go. Okay, so this one just doesn't have any data, but if I go into the component itself, if I scroll down, the max groups displayed, the default is 100 on most of the components, but in this case, if we wanted to truncate it and only ever have it show 10. So real estate is precious. Having 12 columns makes a ton of sense. All of our dashboards should be 12 columns now, and we should really take advantage of the real estate that we have. All right, so this is the part that I'm really interested in, is actually talking about ideas that you guys have. So I'm curious if anybody wants to come off mute and share something that's worked great for them. So something that users have been impressed with, or they felt like was kind of clever that they came up with. What has worked well for you? I'm really curious.
I tried it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead. So I tried something that was very novel. I had never put this in any of my dashboards, especially even ones that were just like for my team. But just the simple component that just has one giant number.
Yes.
I could not believe how impactful that was for my team. Like the giant number that's staring them in the face that's supposed to go up.
I love it.
It's so basic, but it's like,
I love it.
It's just literally, there was one where I'm trying to, for a data quality initiative, to get our support team to ask a question that is about, do people want a push upgrade? And so I have a simple number that just tracks the number of accounts where that field has been set. And people log in and they just keep getting, oh, it went up 1. It's reminding them that when they talk to a customer, ask the stupid question. I never realized just how basic something like that could be. I just poo-pooed it. I was like, that's dumb. It's just a stupid number, but it works brilliantly.
Yeah, and you guys have probably all heard the story about, I don't know if it was Carnegie. Gosh, where was the person goes to an underperforming steel mill, and there's a day shift and a night shift, and it's an underperforming mill, and the day shift produces 6, whatever I don't know what the right word is, whatever the output is of a steel mill. So they produce 6. So the owner of the business comes in and takes a piece of chalk and writes the number 6. And the night crew comes in and goes, what the hell is that? Why is that here? And then, in the morning it was rubbed off and the number 7 was there. And it was basically having the night crew fight against, compete against the day crew. But whatever we measure, we can manage. And so those numbers, I think of that story, which I completely oversimplified and botched, but but it is a good story. So metrics, I love it. That's great. Martin, were you going to share something?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for offering these kind of classes, David. I think ever since I caught wind of them like a year ago, or I don't know, 3/4 of a year ago, I try to catch them. They're very valuable, and it's kind of exactly that level that I feel like there was a gap in training, right? Where like you're not really. I feel like most of the listeners here, viewers, are like Trailhead, yeah, but the concepts are mostly like too simple. And it's really tough to find like quality content on kind of like dashboards and really concepts for advanced users like most of us here. So thank you for that. I wanted to say I had great success using dynamic dashboards with these 3 global filters on top. I'm kind of running our whole marketing reporting in Salesforce, and it's just really powerful. I'm not a big fan of having I feel like in a lot of businesses, you have these one-time use dashboards, right? Like you run a 2-week campaign and then an analyst builds a dashboard and maybe it gets a couple looks in that week after and maybe at the month-end report and then it's over. And then that dashboard, it's just there. Nobody ever looks at it again. So since I don't like that, I really like to create these kind of universal, powerful dashboards that can toggle all our campaign data down to specific initiatives, down to segments, products, for really all time. So for all of our data this year, last year, and it will also be valuable next year. So that's insanely powerful. And on that note, I wanted to answer a question that you threw out a couple times before in these sessions. And since we had to answer in the chat, I never answered because it would have just taken too long. But you were always asking, what would be a use case for these equivalent fields on the global dashboard filter? So I have a great use case because I use them a lot for that. So wanted to take the opportunity to finally unveil that. So really for me, I like to bring sales and marketing organizations together by kind of sharing a common view of the funnel. And since our campaigns and marketing are managed with the native Salesforce campaign object, which then, of course, allows us to pull in the sales outcomes. A very typical use case would be, I have a time filter for that dynamic dashboard, and I have opportunity object data on there, and I have campaign data. So then what you would do with the time filter is I toggle member first associated date, and then for opportunities, I target either the close date or like the open date, depending on
I love it. That's awesome.
Better.
Thank you, Martin. That's really great. I'm taking notes and love that. Perfect example. I might borrow that next week when I'm teaching my 2-day class. So thank you, Martin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else have something they thought to share? Just something that's worked well? And if you want to think some more, I've got some other ideas. From what Martin just shared, the power of using filters, right? Anytime we can have the global data look very, very similar in shape and the KPIs, if we can have that look very similar to the regional data, which looks very similar to a sales team, which looks very similar to what an individual rep looks like. And I think from what Martin was sharing, using filters, so you might have a global sales dashboard and then have a filter for each of your regions around the world, and or they could be regions within North America or wherever. But if you drill down using filters, then you're seeing the exact structure of the dashboard, the exact set of KPIs, but obviously for that individual region or industry or team, whatever. And that it's very powerful. It's also just drives great adoption for leadership teams, because once they figure it out, they're seeing the same metrics and they don't have to guess. They understand how it's being filtered and so on. a couple of other things, speeding up the dashboards is a big topic. You can absolutely use the same report over and over. And I know you guys have seen me with the play dashboard, which is the same one report. And I've used it 20 times in 20 different ways, one report on a dashboard. So a dashboard can have up to 20 components, and we can absolutely reuse the same report over and over. And that doesn't always work, but if you reuse the same report, that's part of what is consuming time in refreshing the dashboard. Another thing is that lightning tables are based on the report type with the filter, not on the report itself. So let's say you create a report and it has 7 columns. Well, if you use that report on a dashboard lightning table component, it's not based on the report, it's based on the report type. That report type might have 1,500 columns available on it. And so you can reuse the same report, and in this case, report type, and that also can help speed things up. Another sort of concept, in fact, we created one of the a dashboard pack that I created in 2008, which hopefully OpFocus doesn't install in anyone's systems anymore, is a data cleanliness dashboard. And basically I had a count using metrics of all leads, and then all leads that don't have an email, or all leads that are missing a title, or all leads that don't have a cell phone. And whatever data points you care about, you could put onto a dashboard that you might just use as an ops team monitoring anomalies in your system. I've heard of other people talk about zero dashboards, where when they look at it, they want to see zeros. So I want to see 0 opportunities that are open with a close date in the past, right? Because that's bad. That's a cardinal sin in pipeline reporting. So anything that, should be 0, we can quickly see if things are not 0. I'm curious if anybody's made good use of exception reporting like that, sort of combined on a dashboard.
David, it's me again. I just wanted to say, yeah, I've had audit dashboards like that, where, as you said, like of course, the cardinal sin with the opportunity, but also things just like other anomalies, like phone numbers with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or something in them, or with like 9999900, stuff like that. So you can, if you think about like the kind of data that you don't want to see, you can actually get really specific with kind of building a dashboard with, I don't know, 20 of these components that are all like looking for like a specific kind of pattern in the data.
Oh, that's great. I was just looking for, where did I put it? Oh, there it is. Okay. I don't know if you guys have seen the Lightning design system. This is a link that I'll share. Just get back to sharing my screen. Are you guys familiar with this? Salesforce has ideas on how it does UX type work. And within the Lightning design system, there are ideas around like guidance and best practices for charts in particular. And there are other things as well. Let's see if I can make this a little larger. So, for different chart types and like, what they're good for, what they're not as good for. So using a vertical bar, it says do use a 0 baseline and don't start with like $100 baseline on those, because we can override some of the axes, the ranges. So there are some guidelines here. What a good use for a scatter plot, what's not a good use for a scatter plot. In this case, there's just too many data points. And I think I've gotten caught with that, with just too many data points on my scatter plots. And it's sort of like hard to make sense of what that's telling us. But with a smaller data set, there might be more meaning. Anyway, I'll share this in the, I just found this the other day. And if there are other things that are useful to you, that you found useful, please, share those as well, and I can share them out with the group. All right, what other ideas are out there? Come on, Bruce. I know you've got some ideas. It looks like Laura asked a question. Curious if there is yet a way to filter just one component within the dashboard. I guess you could put components that are unrelated. So let's say that I have a bunch of opportunities and then I have a custom object that's just completely unrelated called foosball scores. And I put a filter on foosball scores, it will just ignore the rest of them. So that's not what you're asking. You're asking, can I turn them on and off? And I don't think that there's a way to do that. I think you're correct. Unless somebody else on the call has figured it out. So I'm back in Safari, and if I go to one of the play dashboards with filters, I don't know that we can hobble. It sounds like Martin's played with these, so he may. So if we come in here, could you in effect use this filtering within? So you've got your filters. Could you pick like the one on close date and actually pick a totally unrelated date that isn't populated? So could you have a custom field that's not populated and somehow it wouldn't be impacted by the filter changing? I mean, that might take some work to do, Laura, but it sounds like that would be a little kludgy. But it's a great question. All right. Well, what my hope is for the second half of the year, so we'll do a hands-on with the 11 dashboard components in early September. Then there's Dreamforce. My hope for the end of the year, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground on sort of the basics. And what I'd really like to get into is actual examples of this is what a sales team would use. This is what a service team, and sort of digging in, for a nonprofit that's doing fundraising, what would they benefit from? Try to come up with as many interesting use cases, because I think we can learn from each other's industry use cases with these things. So if you do have other ideas to share, if you ever want to jump on a call and just look at them together, I'm very happy to beg, borrow, and steal ideas and incorporate them into thinking that's shared out with the broader community. I appreciate everything that's everyone's shared. I guess the last one that I had, just for, sort of quick thinking. So not all dashboards are appropriate for every day of the week, right? Some dashboards are more daily dashboards. Some might be used on a weekly cadence, while even others are pulled out, dusted off once a year. And I think it's important to be okay with that there are some dashboards that are just sort of quarterly metrics, or maybe that you use to pull together board data for the next board meeting, that you might split them up. I think what a lot of people try to do is do everything on one dashboard, and it sorts, then, let's say it's a weekly leadership meeting, there'll be some things that feel like, why is it the same? Well, it's more of quarterly data, or it's annual data, and then other things are more transactional, could be more daily data, but it doesn't make sense in that context. So I might think of like, who is using this? When is it being used? How often is it being used? And sort of orient around that. Be interesting to hear if other people have other ideas related to organizing information into dashboards relevant to time. We talked about a bunch of stuff today. We talked about profile permissions, organizing dashboards, decluttering the tab. We talked about my teams, interacting with dashboards, cloning, filtering subscriptions, fine tuning. I think where we start to get into the good stuff is start sort of pulling out and sharing things that we've worked on. So I do want to actually set up a formal sharing session. It'll probably be in October. So we'll have the dashboard hands-on in hands-on components. And what I want to do in that is to just dig into each one of the 11 components. It's not always obvious, like what's the best use case for these. When I discovered a great use case for scatter plots, like joined reports are beautiful sources of scatter plot data. Now the scatter plots work a little differently on the source report. When they're pulled through to the dashboard, I think they lose their color, or at least they used to. Michelle, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you though with this.
That's okay. I just was sort of more musing out loud of having a session on, let's just dive into the 11 types of components. Now we did lose one coming out of Classic. We used to be able to embed a Visualforce page onto a dashboard. And if you remember Visualforce pages, we could put anything we could put on the web, you could put into a Visualforce page, which means we could embed YouTube videos into dashboards. We can embed photos. If Kyle was our top marketer of the month, you know, we could have a picture of Kyle on our dashboard, right, Kyle?
Yeah.
So that's a little hard now. And in Lightning, we don't have that component anymore. We have the 11 that are available. Michelle, go ahead. I'm sorry to keep you waiting.
Oh, that's okay. I just had a question that is probably, I don't know, not super relevant, but I have Enterprise Edition, and we have 5 dynamic dashboards.
Yes.
But I think that 2 of my dashboards have been accidentally hijacked by users and probably stored in their private folders somewhere.
Oh, no.
I know, and I'm just hoping that you have some way of. I don't think that they did it on purpose. I think that they probably didn't, know what they were doing, and that's where they ended up.
I don't know. Michelle, I'm sensing some sinister motives here. So I don't know of a way. So it's interesting. If you create a report on dashboards, there are the 20 standard fields, and there's some other columns that we can pull in. I do not think that one of them is this a dynamic dashboard? Similarly, if you use the data loader, you can also export a list of reports and dashboards, and there are slightly different columns available, but I don't think there's one available there. So what you're trying to do is just figure out, where are these 5? Because
yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to figure out, right?
Yeah, and where we've also seen trouble is when companies have, if you download an app from the App Exchange, it could be a partner app, and they could use 2 of them, and then that's part of a managed package, and you're not doing anything with those. So that's part of your limit as well. So other than upgrading to Enterprise to get to, upgrading to Unlimited to get to 10, unless somebody else on the call has an answer for that, I don't have a good answer. But you know what? Michelle, I'll ask the report and dashboard team, because I can think of one person on the team who might say, "Oh, there's a way to get to that."
Oh, cool! Thanks.
Sure. And it's good to keep them busy with oddball questions like this, so that they know that we're. So Christy asked the question: any magic wands for creating dashboard charts for multi-select pick lists? I feel like there's some folks on the call who've done this a whole bunch. I think I tend to avoid them. I have Steve Moe echoing in my ear about his disdain for multi-select. And it was probably in 2007 that I sort of gave up on multi-select pick lists. But anybody have any best practices to share with reporting or dashboards on multi-selects? All right, Christy, you know what? We should do a whole session on multi-select and the impact throughout Salesforce. Wouldn't that be cool? So Christy, multi-select, all right.
Yes, it would. Thank you. Yeah, they're the devil, and I hate the fact that we have them, but the fact is we have them, and the challenge is we're going from Google Analytics dashboard back into Salesforce for leads, and we have 7 fields that are multi-select fields, and
Ooh.
I'm trying to duplicate what has been the look and feel from the Google Analytics Studio reporting to Salesforce, and it is not fun. So,
and the reality is that Salesforce sells multiple other reporting tools, and that's sort of a challenge for how far this will ever be developed out, because there are paid products that are being competed with, essentially. But I'll look into that. That would be an interesting, how to overcome multi-select. That'd be a great Dōjō topic for the fall, wouldn't it?
yes. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've got 2 training classes coming up. Somehow it's been 16 years. I still teach my 5-day admin class. We'll do it in October, right after the winter release. And then next week, I've got the 2-day report and dashboard workshop, which is just great fun. We're just building reports for 2 days. So it's always good fun. I think we've already done quite a bit of the Q&A, but again, we've got the September 8th. I know it's a short week, but I wanted to get it in well before Dreamforce, sort of not knowing the full extent of Dreamforce activities this year. But anyway, Jean-Say, I hope we can see each other at Dreamforce. Howard said, had to leave a few minutes early, prep for a customer call, no worries at all. Anyway, guys, it's really a pleasure, and I'm so glad to have you come off mute. I think this is a better approach for us. So my vote is to keep that going forward. But thank you for joining today, and hope to talk to you all soon. Have a great summer if I don't speak to you.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, take care, guys.